Welcome back, everyone. We're diving into something a little different today. Well, still literature, but it's this time we're looking at a short story.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gustavo Adolfo Bécquer's Green Eyes.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
know a lot of you are probably interested in this story, whether it's for like a class or a book club or just because you love a good, kind of spooky story.
Right.
And Bécquer is often compared to Edgar Allan Poe. So
Oh, yeah, I can see that.
get ready for some chills,
Yeah, definitely.
but also for some really interesting themes that I think we can all relate to.
Yeah. Green Eyes is, it's been around for over a century now, and it's really interesting to see how it's inspired so many different adaptations, like plays and films and even like modern retellings.
Right.
There's just something about it that I think speaks to some really deep fears and desires that we all have.
Okay, so Poe and Bécquer, what makes them so similar?
Well, I think it's really that blend of beauty and terror that Bécquer was so good at. He was part of the Romantic movement in literature, but he added this darkness, this sense of mystery that just pulls you in.
Right.
And like Poe, he drew a lot on folklore and mythology. In Green Eyes, you can really see that. It
Yeah.
has those echoes of those ancient stories about sirens and femmes fatales, those alluring but dangerous female figures.
Yeah, okay. I'm already getting chills just thinking about it.
Yeah.
So for those of us who maybe haven't read the story yet, can you set the scene for us? Like, what's Green Eyes about?
Yeah, so picture this. You're in like this dense ancient forest in Spain,
Right.
and it's full of mist and legends and, kind of spooky vibes. And our main character, Fernando, he's like this nobleman who loves to hunt. And he starts hearing these whispers about this hidden spring deep within the woods,
Okay.
a place that people say has this strange power.
Yeah, don't they always tell you stay away from those places in the stories?
Exactly. And that's exactly what Fernando Square in Hugo tells him. He's like, hey, stay away from that spring. It's dangerous. But Fernando, being the bold, restless type,
Of course.
he ignores the warning.
Yeah.
Maybe it's arrogance. Maybe it's just this drive in him to discover what's hidden, what's unknown.
Right.
Like it's almost like a primal human urge, isn't it?
Yeah. I get that sometimes those warnings just make it more tempting.
Right.
So what does he find at this spring?
Well, he finds a woman
Okay.
of incredible beauty with these just totally mesmerizing green eyes.
Oh.
And he is immediately captivated. He falls completely under her spell.
Those eyes sound pretty intense. Are they just beautiful or is there something more to them?
Oh, they're definitely more than just pretty. Bécquer is playing with how green eyes have been associated with magic and envy and even danger in folklore.
Right.
And Fernando becomes completely obsessed with her.
Mm-hmm.
And he ends up following her willingly into the spring. And then he vanishes beneath the water.
Wait, so we don't know what happens to him? Like, does he drown
Yeah.
or something else?
That's the brilliant part. The ending is totally ambiguous.
Oh, wow.
Bécquer leaves it open to interpretation. Did Fernando meet some kind of supernatural end, or did his obsession literally drive him mad?
Right.
That question is what stays with you long after you finish the story.
Oh, yeah. I can definitely see how that would be so haunting
Yeah,
because it makes you think about what's real and what's just in our heads.
exactly.
But let's go a little bit deeper. What are some of the big ideas that you think Bécquer is exploring here?
Well, one of the most powerful themes is how desire can be destructive. It's not just that Fernando is tempted, it's that his desire for this woman, for this, beauty of the unknown, it leads him to self-destruction.
Right.
And I think this reflects a lot of the anxieties that people were feeling in the 19th century. The world was changing so rapidly, and there was this sense that progress could also be really dangerous.
So it's a cautionary tale, but it's also about something bigger than just one guy making a bad choice.
Exactly. And tied to that is this theme of supernatural temptation.
Okay.
The woman in the spring, she's not just a pretty face. She represents something otherworldly, something seductive, but ultimately harmful,
Right.
It taps into that fear that I think we all have of being lured in by forces that we can't control.
Yeah, so she's like a siren, right?
Yeah.
Or one of those mythical figures who tempt heroes to their doom.
Exactly. And, it's not even just about avoiding temptation. It's about how our desires can blind us to danger. Bécquer seems to be critiquing this idea of romantic idealization, showing how focusing on this idealized image can make us miss all the warning signs.
Right.
When you get swept up in something, maybe a new relationship or a job, and you don't see the problems until it's too late.
Oh, yeah. I've definitely been there. It's so easy to miss those red flags when you're caught up in the excitement of it all.
Right.
But hold on.
Yeah.
You mentioned Bécquer using nature in a symbolic way.
Yeah.
How does the forest play into all of this?
Well, the forest and especially the spring, they're more than just settings, you know?
Right.
They're beautiful, sure, but they're also dark and dangerous.
Right.
The spring, in particular, is what we call a liminal space, that in-between zone. It's
Right.
like a doorway, a threshold.
I think I get what you mean.
You know that feeling when you're standing on a beach at twilight or at the edge of a forest?
Yeah.
It's like this feeling of being between worlds.
Yeah, there's something kind of unsettling about those places. Even though they're beautiful, it's like anything could happen.
Exactly. And the spring embodies that duality of desire, you
Mhm.
know? It's alluring, but also potentially destructive.
Right.
And it mirrors what's going on inside Fernando. He's drawn to what's hidden to the mysteries of the spring, even though it might destroy him.
Okay, this is getting pretty deep.
Yeah.
So we've got desire, temptation, nature's duality.
Uh-huh.
What else should we be paying attention to as we're kind of unpacking this story?
Well, we can't forget about those mesmerizing green eyes.
Right.
But let's talk more about what they symbolize next time.
Okay, so those green eyes, they're obviously not just about like eye color, right?
Yeah.
What makes them so symbolic in green eyes?
Well, Bécquer uses those green eyes to represent a lot of things.
Right.
On one level, yeah, they're incredibly seductive. They draw Fernando in. He can't resist their pull. But they also represent danger and the unknown. You know how green eyes have often been linked with magic and envy, even witchcraft and folklore.
Yeah, there's definitely something unsettling about the way he describes them. It's almost hypnotic, like they're a
Right.
window into another world or something.
Exactly. And that ties into another one of the key symbols, the spring itself. We talked about it being this liminal space, that in-between zone. But think about how water has been used in literature and mythology. It often represents transformation and purification, but also death.
So when Fernando follows the woman into the spring, it's not just like a romantic gesture.
Yeah.
It's symbolic of him crossing a threshold, maybe even giving himself over to something bigger than himself.
That's a really great insight.
Yeah.
And then there's Fernando himself. He's a fascinating character because he's not just a lovesick fool.
Right.
I mean, yes, he's driven by desire and maybe a bit arrogant, but he also embodies this very human urge to explore, to go beyond the limits of what's known. He's almost like a tragic hero driven by his curiosity and ultimately paying the price for it.
It makes me think about like explorers in the real world, pushing boundaries, risking their lives to discover new lands.
Yeah.
There's a similar kind of drive there, this willingness to face the unknown, even if it's dangerous.
That's a great connection. And of course, we have the woman in the spring. She's captivating, but also mysterious and potentially dangerous. McKay leaves her motives unclear, which adds to her allure.
Right.
Is she intentionally luring Fernando to his doom, or is she just as much a prisoner of the spring as he becomes?
It's that ambiguity that really gets under your skin.
Yeah.
We don't know if she's a villain or a victim or maybe a bit of both.
Right.
And that makes her all the more fascinating.
Exactly. She embodies that archetype of the femme fatale, the alluring woman who leads men astray. But Bécquer doesn't make her a simple stereotype. There's a depth to her that we can't fully grasp, which makes her even more compelling.
Okay, so we've got all these layers of symbolism. The eyes, the spring, the characters themselves. It's like Bécquer is creating this web of meaning that we have to untangle as readers.
That's a great way to put it. And it's not just the symbols, it's also the way he uses language to create this feeling of unease. He's a master of sensory detail, of evoking a mood. Think about how he describes the forest, the way the light barely penetrates the trees, the smell of damp earth and decaying leaves the sound of the wind whispering through the branches.
Yeah, it's like you can almost feel the atmosphere of the story,
Yeah.
that sense of being surrounded by something ancient and powerful. It makes me think about when I was hiking in the Redwood Forest a few years ago, that feeling of awe, but also a little bit of fear, like you're in a place where humans aren't really in control.
That's a perfect example. And Bécquer uses his sentences to mirror that feeling. They're long and winding like the paths through the forest, reflecting the labyrinthine nature of both the setting and Fernando's state of mind.
It's like he's pulling us deeper and deeper into the story, just like Fernando is being drawn deeper into the forest and
Yeah.
into his obsession.
Exactly. And then there's the way he uses foreshadowing, dropping these little hints along the way that something bad is going to happen. Like when Inigo tells Fernando about the legends of the spring, or the way Fernando's own thoughts betray his growing obsession.
Right. It's like he's setting us up for the fall, building suspense with every sentence.
Precisely. And that's one of the things that makes Green Eyes so effective. It's not just about the events of the story. It's about the way Bécquer creates that sense of dread, that feeling that something is lurking beneath the surface, waiting to be unleashed.
Okay, I'm starting to understand why people have been so drawn to this story for so long. It's not just a spooky tale.
Mhm.
It's a psychological thriller that really gets under your skin and makes you think about the nature of desire and obsession and the human condition.
You've hit the nail on the head. And what's fascinating is that Green Eyes wasn't just a hit in Spain. It's been translated into countless languages and has resonated with readers all over the world.
That's amazing. Why do you think that is? What makes it so universally appealing?
Well, I think it goes back to those universal themes we've been talking about: desire, temptation, the fear of the unknown. These are things that everyone, regardless of their culture or background, can relate to.
We've all felt that pull of something that might not be good for us. We've all wondered about what's hidden in the shadows, both literally and figuratively.
Exactly. And I think there's also something about the time period in which Bécquer was writing that contributed to the story's enduring appeal. The 19th century was a time of great change and uncertainty. People were questioning traditional beliefs, exploring new scientific discoveries, and facing the challenges of industrialization and urbanization.
So Becquer's stories were tapping into a kind of collective anxiety about the future, about what it meant to be human in a rapidly changing world.
That's a great way to put it. And I think that anxiety is still relevant today, maybe even more so. We're facing our own set of challenges, climate change, technological advancements, political upheavals.
So in a way, Green Eyes is speaking to our own fears and uncertainties about the future, even though it was written over 150 years ago.
Absolutely. It reminds us that even in the face of progress and uncertainty, there are fundamental human truths that remain constant. Our capacity for both good and evil, our vulnerability to temptation, and our enduring fascination with the mysteries of life and death.
It's like Becker's saying, hey, these are the things that have always haunted us, and they're probably going to keep haunting us no matter how much the world changes.
Precisely. And that's why Green Eyes continues to resonate with readers today. It's a story that speaks to something deep within us, something primal and timeless.
Okay, I'm completely captivated by this story now. But you mentioned that Green Eyes has had a lasting impact inspiring other artists and thinkers.
Right.
What do you mean by that? So Green Eyes isn't just a great story on its own. It's like it's had this ripple effect, throughout other art forms.
Right, it's true.
How has it influenced other artists?
Well, think about it. You've got this really haunting atmosphere, these vivid images and these timeless themes of obsession and the supernatural. I mean, it's like a recipe for artistic inspiration.
Yeah.
Green Eyes has been directly adapted into plays and films,
Oh, wow.
each with its own interpretation of the story.
I can see how it would be perfect for like visual mediums. Those dark forests, the woman's captivating gaze.
Exactly. And
Wow.
even beyond those direct adaptations, you can see its influence in literature and music and even visual art. The femme fatale archetype, the exploration of the darker side of human nature, these became staples of the Gothic and horror genres after Bécquer.
It's like he provided a blueprint for a certain kind of psychological horror that we still see today.
Exactly. And what's really interesting is how Green Eyes has been reinterpreted over time.
Oh, how so?
Well, for example, there are feminist readings that give the woman in the spring more agency.
Hmm.
They explore her as this powerful figure, maybe even a symbol of rebellion against societal expectations.
That's really interesting. So it's not just about the story itself, but how each generation kind of finds new meaning in it.
Precisely. And that's what makes a truly great work of art so enduring. It sparks these conversations, it challenges assumptions, and it stays relevant even as the world changes around it.
Okay, so we've talked about Green Eyes being this chilling tale and a psychological thriller and a source of artistic inspiration. But at its core, it's a story about choices, right?
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Fernando is faced with this choice: to heed the warnings and stay away from the spring, or to follow his curiosity and his desire, even if it leads him into danger. And in a way, we all face similar choices in our own lives.
Yeah, I can see that. We all have our own enchanted forests, so to speak. Those things that tempt us, that seem alluring, but might have hidden dangers.
Exactly. Think about a time when you were really drawn to something, maybe a person or a goal or an idea, but it turned out to be more complicated than you thought.
Mm.
Maybe it even had some negative consequences.
Oh, yeah, we've all been there. It's so easy to get caught up in the excitement of something new and ignore those warning signs.
Right. And that's the question that Bécquer leaves us with. Will we be like Fernando, driven by our desires? Or will we listen to those inner voices of caution, even if it means missing out on something that seems amazing?
That's a really tough question.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think there's an easy answer.
No.
But I think that's what makes this whole deep dive into Green Eyes so valuable. It's not just about analyzing a story. It's about understanding ourselves and the choices that we make.
I agree. And it's about recognizing those green-eyed temptations in our own lives,
Yeah.
those things that seem alluring but might lead us down a dangerous path.
This has been amazing. I feel like I have a whole new appreciation for green eyes. It's definitely a story that I'll be thinking about for a long time.
I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah.
And hopefully it sparked some reflection on your own enchanted forests and the choices you make when you're faced with temptation.
That's the power of great literature, isn't it?
It is.
It stays with you, it makes you think, and maybe even changes the way you see the world. Thanks so much for guiding me through this deep dive.
It's been my pleasure. Until next time, happy reading.
And to all of you listening, remember, keep exploring, keep questioning, and maybe just maybe keep an eye out for those mesmerizing green eyes. But don't say, we didn't warn you.